Okay, hi everyone. This is going to be just a very quick demo and overview of eClinicalWorks, just so you can get a feel for the workflow and the user interface and basically how things run in general. I'm not going to get too much into the finer aspects or really any of the customization type aspects in this particular demo, just because I want to be able to just give you a quick feel for what's involved. There's a whole huge library of videos that eClinicalWorks has once we're signed up with them that you'll be able to use for training. Some of them do get pretty deep into the weeds and they tend to run kind of long. And I generally fall asleep after the first 15 minutes. So what I'm going to try to do is keep these as engaging and short and focused as possible for the specific topic that we're discussing, and really kind of gear it towards what our needs are. And there'll be plenty of opportunity, I think, to get into the finer aspects of it. Most of which you'll probably be able to figure out on your own because it is very intuitive. And of course, if there's something that you see here that I covered too quickly or that you didn't understand, feel free to text me or email me, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Keep in mind that a lot of the things that you see in the demos that I'll be showing are set up for my particular practice. I don't actually use the desktop version all that much. I primarily operate off of my iPad. So the templates and the workflow are really designed for the efficiency of an iPad, not so much the desktop. So you may see some things here that you might find don't really make sense for you, but that's okay because there's at least 5 different ways to run through an office visit. And again, like I said, you can really fine tune it and customize it to suit your needs. So with that said, this is your login screen when you log in. As a physician, there's a different presentation screen for the rest of your staff that's more tuned into what their needs would be. But as a physician, this is what you see. So this is your schedule. Here's your patients with their names, the reason for the visit, age, check-in status. Nice little feature over here for your nurse or MA is that you can put in whatever room the patient's in once they get to a room, so you know where you're going and you know where your patient is. There's a status indicator also, so when they check in at the front will indicate that they're waiting. When they get called back to triage for their vitals and weight and all that stuff, that'll be indicated by your nurse. And then depending on whatever pre-screening functions, how much or how little you have them do, once that's completed and their vitals are recorded, there'll be a little icon that shows up here with a stethoscope to let you know that the patient's ready. They change the status over and you're ready to go. So you're going to click on the patient's name and it's going to ask you to carry forward the medications. You see a nice little pop-up warning there. You click yes. And then this is letting you know that there was a template that was triggered at the time that the patient came in. Based on the reason for the visit. And you see that over here. Again, not going to spend too much time on that, but that's part of the design of your workflow. So that when the patient comes in, they'll tell you the reason for the visit. Usually it's already indicated somewhere in the notes on your schedule. The check-in person or your MA will pick the reason for the visit, and then once that gets picked, a template will get fired and assigned to that visit. If you want to work with templates. Not everybody does, but I find it very efficient. So you're going to click yes, and what that's telling you basically is that you're working from a template, and any of the past medical history or critical elements of the past history that don't get carried over are going to be left blank, and that you need to fill them in. So that's what that's telling you. So here's your note, and here's the whole screen. Here's the whole thing in one shot. And what I like about it is it's very condensed, but it's not so cluttered that you feel overwhelmed, I think, by what's on the screen. You don't have these different, 5-stage tabs where you're popping from one field to another. Here's your whole visit, soup to nuts, from top to bottom. There's a bunch of different ways that you can navigate through this. I'm going to use just the general, what's called the navigator function, just for the purposes of this demo, because it's probably the most universal form, and I think probably the most familiar. But there are many different ways that you can navigate through a note, for example, of course, you can pop into each one of these fields individually and address them that way as well. So we'll start off over here just to show you the chief complaint. That's the name of the template and the reason for the visit. The reason that you see this multiple times here is because I screwed up previously when I set this up the first time. But what happens is when you have the chief complaint and the name of the template, when the reason gets entered in for the visit, that gets tagged based on the chief complaint. So they're linked to each other, if you like. And that's why it shows up here more than once. Of course, I did it twice, so that's why you've got to hear it 3 times, because I messed up. This doesn't show up in your note unless you want it to. I don't include the chief complaint in my final note because it's usually, it's obvious, and it's usually in the sort of header line of whatever your HPI is. So, if you want to include that, knock yourself out, but this is really just, it's there and it doesn't really mean all that much. So we'll start off over here with your HPI, and here you have the different elements of your HPI field. You can have as many as you want. You can create new ones, and each field is, you have your default entries and you have your customizable entries. So here's the header line that I use for each annual exam. Patient is presenting to the office today for annual well woman visit, blah, blah, blah. Pretty standard stuff. And then you go into their menstrual history, and this will pop up here. Last menstrual period was October 11th. She has regular cycles. She's currently using birth control. She has a Mirena, and she's very happy with it. Done. Okay. Now you're going to go over to your exam, and you have the ability here, if it's a normal exam, if all your findings, you have your default settings and everything set up, you just click here, select default, yes, boom, done. Your exam's finished in one click. Again, of course, you can customize all of these fields. Within each setting, there is a breakout of each of these findings. I'm not going to get into that at this point, again, too much, because I don't want to overwhelm you. I just want to show you how you navigate through a visit, assuming that you are working things this way. Then you're going to go over to your assessment. You can see our patient here, Angela Test, has been through quite a lot. She's probably been through puberty, pregnancy, menopause, and a hysterectomy several times within her lifetime, because she's our test patient, so that's why all of that stuff is here. But in this case, you have the pre-populated diagnosis codes that you need for this visit. Again, that's part of your template. You can choose to include or not include whatever you want in that diagnosis code specific to that template. In this case, I include the mammogram because some of these patients, sometimes, even though they're younger than what's really required, you might find something that requires a mammogram. And for my purposes, I just think it's easier to exit out than to go hunting for a code if I don't need it. So we've removed that one because she doesn't need a mammogram. And then we're going to go over to preventive medicine, which is basically where you do your counseling. I have pre-populated templates that I use for my new OB visits and for genetic screening. And then I have one over here for GYN counseling, which is a whole other menu of items. In this case, the annual exam is already pre-populated with the counseling that I typically use for that kind of exam. And then we go over to treatment. And this is where you order your labs. Now, this part I'm going to spend a little time on because I think it's a really neat feature that we didn't have in Athena and really saves you a lot of headaches. And I think is a very powerful feature. And that is when you click over to the labs, you see these are all in green. That's because this patient, based on her insurance, is designated for her labs to go to Quest. And so this is indicating to you that as long as everything's green, it's okay to pick from these labs. Now you could, for some reason, I don't know why, if you might want to or try to, pick a different lab, they won't be green. And in fact, if you click on any one of these, which I'm not going to because it's a hassle to remove it, if you screw up, it's just going to take up more time in the demo. But basically, if you did, it would show up over here in red, and then when you try to process it, it'll give you, your typical pop-up screen and say, hey, dummy, do you really want to do this? So it really stops you from sending things to the wrong lab, which is, I think, a huge plus. So in this case, we're just going to order a pap smear with the HPV reflex screen. That's already associated to our diagnosis code, which is over here, encounter for GYN exam. We close that out. Now, again, this is stuff that depending on how you set up your workflow, usually my MA takes care of this stuff. This has already been pre-populated when the patient was in triage. You have the option to do it, any way you like, and of course, you can adjust labs as necessary. So if something wasn't ordered that needs to be added on, you can do it at this point. But if it's just a routine exam and things have been pre-populated and everything's already in there and you're happy with the information, you're good to go. The next screen over are going to be your metrics alerts. So anything that is required for any kind of HEDIS scores or shared savings programs, MIPS, MACRA, meaningful use, whatever you want to throw in there, it's going to indicate to you here, hey, you didn't ask her whether she stopped smoking or, that kind of stuff. So that's in this screen here. It's blank because I didn't include it in this template. And then you're going to go over to your billing. So here's the codes for the visit. And this is actually old, doesn't belong in this template, so I'm just going to remove it. But here's your annual exam with the right CPT codes and the ICD-9 codes that we've associated with it. And you've got your follow-up already pre-populated in the template, and you're done. And that's your visit. So now this is going to take you, when you're done with the visit, it's going to take you over to the lab screen, and you're going to transmit any labs that you wanted to send. This green checkbox is, again, another safety stopgap measure indicating that you're good to go, that you're sending it to the right lab. And you just click send, and it gets transmitted electronically. It'll print up a rec if you use a rec. It'll print up a barcode if you use barcodes. A paper rec, to send with your sample. And that's it, and you're done. Now, a couple of things that I want to point out. I did skip over some stuff. I didn't go into medical history or past medical history. Again, primarily for the sake of keeping this, to the point. And again, because the way I navigate on my iPad is slightly different than what you would do on your desktop. But you can set these tabs up here in your encounter so that it will process through in your navigator to take you to the next appropriate stage of your exam. I just don't have it set up that way. Same thing over here. Again, I'm just showing you here that there's multiple different ways to navigate through this. So you can navigate from this menu here. You've got the same icons across the top here, so you can jump from one screen to the next, effectively accomplishing the same thing. Let's see, what did we want to get back to here in your encounter? Oh, we were doing past history. So if you're going to go here, you've got your past history, and you'll enter whatever the appropriate fields are here. History is verified. Let's say your history, there's nothing to enter. Allergies. You just click this box here. She has no known drug allergies. You'll navigate over to the next one. Let's just say, for the sake of this demo, she has no past surgical history. Again, this is stuff that you could either have your MA do at the intake, or you can do as you go through the patient, and depending on how you like to navigate through your screens. So I'm kind of backtracking here again, but I just want to show you I didn't forget anything. I just wanted to kind of take you through the whole visit without having to stop the flow too much. So we're just going to put non-contributory, social history. She's single, non-smoker, no alcohol use, and social history verified, and we'll just click out of that. And so that stuff is all entered in there now as well. And yeah, I didn't clear this out here actually. Again, this is one of those things that's designed for the workflow in my iPad, not necessarily the desktop. So that's why it looks a little funny. GYN history, we said her last period was, what did I say? I think I said October 11th. And we'll blank this out. Again, like I said, you normally wouldn't be jumping around like this. I'm just filling this in just for now so you can see what a completed note looks like. And then, of course, we got into the past GYN and OB history. I'm just going to leave this blank for now, but I think you guys get the idea. You know, and you would fill in all of this stuff as well if this was a new patient. So then when you're done with your visit, you lock it, and it'll give you a nice looking note with all the headings, subheadings, your electronic signature, which you'll load in there. And this is, to me, I think a very legible format that's easy to look at, easy to figure out when you go back and visit, you know, pull up prior notes and progress notes, as opposed to, you know, looking through pages and pages of data that I think, you know, we all got headaches from, I think, looking at Athena when you would try to go back and look at a patient's previous notes. Here it's all in one place, and it's all laid out pretty much the way we were taught in medical school, you know, with everything, all the correct headings and the way things I think are supposed to be, you know, that make sense to us as physicians. So that's pretty much it. Hope everybody gets a good feel for it for this. I hope I didn't confuse you too much. I know I jumped around a little bit at the end and was sort of backtracking and filling in the blanks. But again, that's mostly because the way my templates run on the desktop's a little bit different from how it runs on my iPad. For those of you who are interested in seeing a demo to see how it actually runs on an iPad, it's even better than this. But I think this is pretty good, and I think, you know, I think a major improvement over what we were used to dealing with. So hopefully you guys agree. But I just think it's a much cleaner and simpler user interface and much more logical and intuitive. So that's it. That's the end of the demo. Like I said, any questions, something that you want me to focus on next time, there'll be plenty of opportunity, I think, for that. But if there's something in particular you want to ask me about this demo, feel free. Again, you can text me or email me. And that's it.